Hello and welcome back, my dear students of class 11, with me, your tutor, Rebecca, in this psychology class. Today, our topic will be development of psychology in India, psychologists at work, psychology in everyday life. Now, these three topics will be the last topic of this unit 1, that is Introduction to Psychology. Firstly, we will discuss the development of psychology in India. We will look at how this psychology has developed in India. It was during the British period that psychology, that education was given emphasis for the Indians, and psychology was a stream that was embedded in philosophy. Unfortunately, the philosophical roots in the Indian tradition have not influenced the development of modern psychology in India, and the development of the discipline in India continues to be dominated by Western psychology. Since there was a lot of psychology influenced by psychology, they try to become more independent. They try to become more Western in training and in orientation. Now, in India, however, the roots of psychology can be traced back to the vast philosophical and religious literature, such as Vedic and epic literature, all right? And in particular, Vedas, Yoga Sutras, Bhagavad Gita are the Indian sources. They are the Indian sources for analyzing various aspects of minds and humans' behavior and mind. An Indian philosopher, Sir Aurobindo, who was a poet, guru, a yogi, and a nationalist, made a significant contribution to psychology from the Indian tradition. And the modern era of Indian psychology began in the department of philosophy at Calcutta University, where the first syllabus of experimental psychology was introduced and the first laboratory was established in 1915. Now, the psychology was first established in Calcutta University in the Department of Philosophy in the year 1916, and after that, another Department of Applied Psychology was established in 1938. And from there, separate psychology departments was largely started between 1940 to 1960. An Indian philosopher, an Indian humanist philosopher, Bojendra Nath Seal, drafted the first syllabus for experimental psychology in India and a laboratory for a demonstration purpose in 1905. And after 11 years, it was upgraded as the first psychology department known as the Department of Experimental Psychology. Now, the beginning of this modern experimental psychology was greatly influenced by the Indian psychologists, namely Dr. N.N. Sengupta, Dr. Narendra Nath Gupta, who was a student of William Wundt and was the first person who chaired this department in 1916. And in 1924, the Indian Philosophical Psychological Association was founded, and during this time, another significant person was Jirendra Shekhar Bose, who was inclined toward this psychoanalytic theory, psychoanalysis, and started the Indian Psychoanalytic Society. He was the first person to be awarded a PhD from the Indian University, that is Calcutta University, and the departments of psychology was soon established in Mysore and Patna. In 1946, psychology was started in University of Patna under the separate two wings of, that is, experimental psychology and Department of Applied Psychology, that was based on experimenting new techniques and exploring new research. And in 1956, the University Grant Commission, the UGC, was set up, and its responsibility was to provide funds to various universities to start this psychology department. And after that, lot of centers such as NCRT, NIP, CCD, National Institute of Public Cooperation and Child Development, etc. also started developing. They also started research in different fields of psychology. Now, on the other hand, one of the most great Indian psychologists of the modern period, known as Durganand Sinha, was an Indian psychologist who made psychology in India a new direction. He has given a new direction, a new identity through his seminal writings and efforts. Now, this is the first book featuring Durganand Sinha, seminal contribution to psychology. Now, in his book, it includes key articles in the areas of indigenous psychology, oneself, family, and social values, and humans, and also it was related to socio-economic development. Now, his lifelong endeavors was to develop a psychology of India, and through his publication, a new areas of research has opened up. His book, Psychology in a Third World Country. His book, Psychology in a Third World Country, The Indian Experience, 1986, played an important role in shaping contemporary psychological research in India. Now, and because of this development, the history of modern psychology as a social science in India has four main phases. According to him, the first phase, till independence, was a phase which emphasizes on experimental, psychoanalytic, and psychological testing research. It means that he emphasizes on the person experience, their unconscious mind that lead to certain unwanted, undesirable behavior, and the assessment is done in order to understand a person better and their behavior thoughts, and personality. The second phase, till the 1960s, was a phase of expansion of psychology. Expansion of psychology in India into different branches of psychology, which say like clinical psychology, cognitive psychology, health psychology, etc. In order to understand, this phase was the expansion of this psychology, the branches of psychology, in order to understand the various fields that contribute to understand human behavior. Now, the third phase was on problem-oriented research. They emphasize on this in order to understand the exact nature of a problem of Indian society, and to find out the relevant solution, to solve their problems. Now, the new identity of psychology in India led to the development of the fourth phase, that is indigenization, which started during the late 1970s. Now, in this phase, Dr. Sinha, he made psychology relevant to Indian context to serve the needs of the Indian people. While this development continues to grow, psychology in India make a significant contribution to the field of psychology in the world. It has become more depending on emphasizing the need of developing psychological principles which are rooted in our own social and cultural context. Thus, psychology in India is now being applied in various fields, in various professional areas, such as not only the psychologists have been working with the special children, those who have special problems, but they are also employed in hospitals as clinical psychologists. They are also working as a psychologist in corporate organization, in the HRD, advertisement department, sports department, and in the development sector, and in IT sector as well. So that was the development of psychology in India. Moving on to the next topic, that is psychologists at work. Now, our next topic is psychologists at work. Now, when we talk about psychology at work, we are referring to the application, the psychological principles within the work setting. Now, studies have shown that using psychology at workplace, it helps and solve problems and also create improvements in the workplace, okay? And this psychologist is someone who studies mental processes and human behavior by observing, interpreting, and recording how people relate to one another with and the environment. These psychologists have the professional training and clinical skills that can help to build up your resilience so that you can cope up healthier with your stress, that can help you to have a healthier coping skills that allows you to bounce back with easier, help you cope up more effectively with life issues and health problems. And also these psychologists teach us the skills, the specific skills to the workplace to help in the work environment. Now there are various psychologists who works under special areas. The first psychologist is clinical psychologist. Now, these clinical psychologists, they are a qualified professionals who are able to provide direct services to clients needing help with mental or behavioral issues. They work with patients. They work with patients one-on-one or in group settings, diagnosing and treating the patients for various mental health disorders. Also, it is important to note that these clinical psychologists typically do not prescribe medication. They do not prescribe medication to treat mental illness. Rather, they use psychological techniques to help the patient. By law, only a psychiatrist are able to prescribe psychiatric medication because they are medical doctors who are experts in medical fields. So both these clinical psychologists and psychiatrists, they work on the same mental health, mental field, but they are different from. They perform different roles in their respective fields. A clinical psychologist, their main goal is to help their client, identify their psychological, emotional, or their behavior issues, and then assist the client by defining goals and a plan of actions to help them achieve personal, social, educational, and vocational development. The next psychologist at work is counseling psychologists. Now, these counseling psychologists work in the behavioral health field. They help people with emotional and mental issues that can be fear, anxiety, depressions. They try to improve and diminish feelings of distress. They work with the client to reduce their psychological distress and to improve and to promote their well-being of individual groups and families. The next psychologist at work is community psychologist. Now, this community psychologist is someone who focused on problems related to community mental health. Because their focus is on their health, their main function is to help the community. They seek to educate the community and develop prevention progress. Now, these community psychologists work to address social problems, promote health, and improve people's lives, and implement programs that can benefit the community. Now, under this community-based rehabilitation, this CBR is one of major interest to community psychologists. These CBR are primarily responsible for developing people with disabilities, also providing them and providing support, their families with necessary support. They work to promote self-esteem, family inclusion, and access to service in the health, education, labor, and employment sector. The next psychologist at work is school psychologist. Now, when I say school psychologists, I'm sure you must have get the idea that school psychologists might be dealing with the students, right? So these school psychologists work in educational settings. They work in educational system, and their role vary according to the levels of their training. They are uniquely qualified members of each of school teams that supports students' ability to learn and teachers' ability to teach. School psychologists, they support students' academic, like helping and motivating them in their studies and emotional needs, and they also try to promote positive and mental health. They try to create safe, positive environments, such as preventing bullying and other forms of violence, and promoting positive discipline and school, widely positive behavior supports. The next psychologist at work is organizational psychologist. Organizational psychologist is someone who deals with workplace productivity and management, and also employ working style. Now, these psychologists help the employee and motivate their workforce. They study consumer behavior and work as a consultant. They work as a consultant to organize skill training or programs in order to improve their business, organization, and effectiveness. So those were the psychologists who works at different settings. Now moving on to the next topic, that is psychology in everyday life. As we already know now that psychology is the scientific study of human mind and behavior it basically studies human character, and it influences on our behavior. It is the application of knowledge to understand issues or problems that may be related to our health, education, events, relationship, and employment, etc. Now, in order to solve these problems, intervention at the individual level are needed in order to change. It is because of these problems. That results unhealthy thinking, unhealthy behavior, unhealthy attitude, and this negative attitude towards people and self affect us. But it is through psychological examination, it is through psychological analysis that helps us to solve this problem and find effective solutions. Now, the potential of psychology in solving problems of life is being realized more and more, and media has played a significant role in this. Now, you may have seen in a television that a counselor or a therapist suggesting solution to various problems, and various problems relating to children, adolescents, adults, or the elderly people. So many psychologists plays an active role in designing and executing intervention in order to provide people with better quality of life. Now, we can find psychologists working in various settings, right? Such as schools, hospitals, industries, prison, etc. Besides helping us in rendering social services to others, the knowledge of psychology is also personally relevant to us in our everyday life and is very helpful. Now, there are some ways in which psychology is applicable to our everyday life, like such as improving our communication skills. Psychology makes it easier to understand how we think and behave while interacting or communicating with others. Now, with the help of psychology, we can comprehend gesture and actions of others, which would make communication even easier to communicate. Now, psychology also helps to understand They also help to understand others and establish friendship and relationship with others. It also helps to instill confidence. It means that we can gain a self-confidence. We can gain a self-confidence by learning and knowing more about ourselves and our personality. In this way, this helps the person to know his or her weakness and enables them to build on them. The principles and methods of psychology helps to understand. They help us to understand ourselves in relation to others. It is not that we don't think about ourselves, but most of the time, very often, some of us think highly of ourselves, and any feedback that deny our opinion about ourselves is rejected because we engage in what is called a defensive manner. We try to defend ourselves. We try to avoid criticism in our lives. Now, in some cases, a person came to acquire a habit of running down themselves, and because of that, both of these conditions do not permit us to grow. So we need a positive and balanced understanding of ourselves. And for that, we have to gain insight. We have to gain insight in order to understand ourselves and others. It is psychology that tells us about aspects of human behavior. It does not only tell us the general characteristics of human behavior, but also points out the differences in our behavior. It helps us to gain insight into people's behavior. And also through this insight, we gain understanding of ourselves, awareness of ourselves that help us to take right decision and also try to reduce stress. So thus, without realizing it, psychology is an everyday occurrence of our life. It is not just for students or for mental health professionals that studies the behavior, the human behavior, or the psychological disorders or the events. But there is a lot of psychology that everyone understands. So the knowledge of psychology is very useful. It is quite very useful in our everyday life and is rewarding from a personal as well as social point of view. So here we have come to the end of our topics. We have completed this unit 1. Thank you all for joining me.